Thank you, Pat. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so the state has gone through an energy bust. Price declines have been as severe as what we saw in the 1980s, yet no recession in Texas. So the economy has proven to be quite resilient. What I'm going to do today is give you an update on where we are and what we expect going forward. So Texas grew at a pretty healthy clip in the past 5 years. And last year, despite the decline in prices, we saw a 3.6% increase in employment. That was about 412,000 jobs last year. But we started seeing the impact of the oil price decline this year, and our growth has slowed. Through July, and this is the latest data we have, we grew about a 1.3% annualized rate and added only 91,000 jobs. Now, of course, in addition to oil prices, low oil prices, the strong dollar is another culprit. And the outlook is somewhat cloudy. We don't expect growth to accelerate this year. In fact, our forecast for the year is 1.3% going forward. So that would amount to about 150,000 jobs for the year. Texas grows faster than the U.S. Here, you're looking at that data since 2010, but this is true even if you go back 30 years. So what this is quarter over quarter change. The blue for Texas and the red is the U.S. And this year, though, for the first time in a long while, our growth fell short of the nation's. In the first quarter, we only grew about 0.5%, and then 1.4% in the second. The third quarter, which is July, is the first month of that third quarter. It sort of came in with a bang. And if you ask me why, I cannot tell you. Although I'll show you some of the numbers. 3.7% growth in July. That was about 40,000 jobs added just in July, which is pretty amazing. And then for the U.S., that's August and July together, 1.8%. So we did grow faster. Now, the August numbers are going to come out today, so we'll see what they look like. So up until July, though, it was a tale of two economies. Basically, it was the goods producing sector versus the service producing sector. And you can see that in that chart. The blue, this is month over month growth, annualized. And the blue is total Texas non-farm. The red is goods producing. And the green is the service producing. And you can see that for 5 months in a row, that goods producing sector lost jobs. We actually lost about 51,000 jobs this year, while the service sector was doing pretty okay, 2.6% growth and added about 113,000 jobs. So the clump at the very end, to your right, is the July data. And you can see that goods producing sector actually came back and grew actually faster than the service produced sector in July. So where did the growth come from? Well, here you're seeing a little bit more granular data. It didn't come from energy, although energy losses did dampen. So here you're seeing, again, quarter over quarter growth. These are the different sectors in the economy, the main sectors in the economy. Every bar is a 1 quarter growth. And that hashed one is July, which sort of stands for the third quarter. It's been made quarterly, so you can compare the numbers. And you see that actually construction sector was pretty strong in July at the beginning of the third quarter. We added about 4,700 jobs in construction. And then the manufacturing sector, which had been declining for the first part of the year, also added jobs, about 1,600 jobs. For the construction sector, we think it's sort of construction playing catch up. The wet weather really delayed a lot of projects in construction this year. So playing catch up in July, it may not last. It may peter out. For the manufacturing sector, a lot of those jobs were in non-durable goods, but we also saw some in machinery, in computers, and in electronics. And you have to sort of remember that 25% of manufacturing employment is related to exports. The service sector continued to expand, and you see that professional and business services, education and health, leisure and hospitality all grew. The fastest growing was leisure and hospitality, and that's restaurants and hotels And we think maybe this has something to do with the low gasoline prices and people have some more money to spend and they're eating out. The next fastest was was education and health, but it was actually health. It grew about 5%, added 40,000 jobs. And increased insurance coverage, I think, has increased the demand for health care and added jobs in this sector. The thing to remember is these are from mid-July. So since mid-July, oil prices have fallen, the dollar has strengthened, and we've had news of China slowing. So such robust growth is probably not sustainable going forward. Looking at the cities, well, I should actually say something else. Sorry, go back. The unemployment rate for Texas held steady at 4.2%. So that's still pretty low unemployment. It hasn't gone up because the workers that have been laid off from the energy industry have either left the labor force or have left the state. So we haven't seen an increase in the unemployment rate. Firms are still reporting worker shortages in, especially for specialty skills like electrical and software engineering, for diesel mechanics, for welders, and we're even seeing some low-skill personnel shortages, such as in machinery and food manufacturing. So this is all from our contacts. Okay, looking at the metro, some cities are doing better than others. Midland and Odessa I put here because they were really the fastest growing cities in Texas in 2014, 8% growth. But now they've actually lost jobs, about 3,700 jobs for the year, this year. Houston, of course, Houston is a center for energy and a lot of energy manufacturing, energy-related manufacturing, and that has lost jobs. Through June, although it came back up a little bit in July, so for the year now it's flat. In contrast, to these two, Austin and Dallas are really doing very well. In Dallas, it's really the relocation of Toyota, State Farm, Liberty Mutual into Dallas, so there's a lot of relocations into Dallas, a lot of construction. Austin, you know, the second quarter there was a lot of high tech, but overall, if you look at the whole year, it's service sector behind the growth. It's mainly professional and business services, about 9,500 jobs here. Leisure hospitality, again, that's the restaurants and hotels, 7,900 jobs. And education and health. Austin added about 24,000 jobs this year, so that's pretty good growth. Now, so the Texas housing market is still doing quite okay. I'm not going to go into that, but where you see the effect of the low oil price is in the office market. And here, you see vacancy rates in the 4 largest metros of the state. And vacancies have continued to fall in Dallas and in San Antonio. And Austin is quite flat, but you can see the Houston vacancy rates going up, and that's office market in Houston is quite weak. Now, I did say that Texas exports have been relatively weak this year. They fell actually slightly in July, and are down about 8% year over year. And this decline reflects 2 factors: weaker global demand and the stronger dollar. So the pie chart shows you where we send our exports. And so our largest trading partner is Mexico, about 37%, then 10% for Canada, 11% for the European Union, 15% for Asia, 16% for Latin America, and about 5% for China. And most of our trading partners' economies are quite weak. Mexico has been slow. Canada and several of the Latin American countries are in recession. Europe is getting better, but China is slowing, so that is not helping our exports. The strength of the dollar isn't helping either. The red line there is the Texas trade-weighted value of the dollar, and what that is the value of the dollar against the currencies of the countries that we trade with, and it's weighted with the share of our trade with them. And you see that dollar's appreciation hurts our exports. Our exports started declining as the dollar appreciated. And our contacts are telling us that dollar appreciation is hurting capital equipment industry in general, and high tech in particular. PC and communication infrastructure demand from China has been quite weak, is what we hear. Well, of course, looking at the energy sector, oil prices at 45 have put a real damper on energy activity in Texas. The rig count, total Texas rig count, started falling last November and fell about 60% and stands at about 366 right now, down from 906. We don't have September data for the Permian and Eagle Ford. You see the rig counts there. They started falling in November also. But in August, well, you see that the Eagle Ford rigs have been declining. That decline sort of flattened out a little bit. In the Permian, rig counts started going up in May when prices went up to about $60. And what our contacts are telling us is that they have really stopped drilling in the tier 2, tier 3 properties, but they are drilling in the tier 1 properties that are the most productive. And another silver lining here is, of course, as drilling activity slowed, costs have come down, so that helps the productive producers. You see in blue that Texas oil production, that hit its max in March. It was $3.64 million, million barrels per day, and has declined since then. The latest data that we have is from June, and that's about 3.4 million barrels, a decline of about 200,000 barrels per day since March. And almost there. Last slide. And what you see here's illustrating the impact of declining energy activity. Here you're seeing continued claims by industry. These are these are unemployment claims by industry. And the pie shows you the share by industry. The mining sector, which is about 10% of claims, has accounted for 50%, more than 50% of the growth in claims since December. So this is showing you the impact of the oil and gas layoffs. And you have to remember that oil and gas is only about 2% of employment. So this is a huge share for the oil industry. And the good news is that they've turned down. Okay, so I'm going to finish up. Plunge in oil prices has slowed growth in Texas. As I said, 1.3% year to date. July came in very strong, but that growth may not be sustained. As I said, oil prices have declined since then. Dollar has strengthened. And these two factors plus weak growth in China, Japan, Canada, Latin America, these are headwinds for us. And I think for oil prices, the risks are still on the downside. There's Iran coming into the market next year. China is slowing, and even though U.S. output has started to fall, there's a lot of supply in the market out there. The tailwind is the healthy U.S. economy. It's showing relatively healthy growth. And as I said, we expect 1.3% for the year, so we're not expecting an acceleration. This is slower than our long-run average, but it is positive growth. And so weak growth, but no recession. So thank you.
Look, it's me. It's an honor to be here today, share my perspective on how entrepreneurship and technology intersect with the 2016 economic forecast. Just a quick poll, how many of you consider yourself entrepreneurs? And technology industry? All right, so I'm going to talk about something that these other brighter minds are probably not going to talk about. And that's the trends of entrepreneurship and technology in Texas, but also more specifically in our regional ecosystem. I want to start with a quick recap of some trends that we've seen in Texas as a whole. So none of this is a surprise to anybody, but it's very relevant to the conversation of technology and what's going to be happening in the coming years. We're declining in age, we're increasing in our numbers of seniors. We're home to 4 of the fastest top 10 growing cities in the nation: Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and I don't know if you heard last week, Houston's about to eclipse Chicago as number 3. So we have an explosive population. In the next 5 to 10 years, 35% of that population will be over the age of 50. That is a lot of aging people. So there's no denying that we are in the midst of a huge population shift and demographic change in our city. Now, I know that's not new news, but when you tie it to some of the trends I've seen in the last 23 years, to be precise, 23 years this month, in the beginning of the commercialization of the internet to now, there's also some pretty profound changes. The internet has changed how businesses are funded. It's changed how they're built. It's certainly changed how they're operating, and we've all experienced that. But in the last 10 years, what has shifted is that you can start a company, a tech company, on less than $1 million in funding, and that's caused a massive shift in traditional financing models. So there's 470 million people globally that identify as an entrepreneur. They self-identify as an entrepreneur. That represents 300 million startups. That's a lot. It's half of them are tech startups, so about 1.35 million. So there's 1.35 million tech startups in the global economy. I think it's safe to say entrepreneurship has arrived. It is possibly overblown. We have Mark Zuckerberg as, the rock star of unicorns, and we have Mark Cuban as the celebrity investor extraordinaire. So entrepreneurship has certainly hit prime time. But it's not all rainbows and unicorns for tech startups. It's tough. So while it might be really cost efficient right now to go pursue your dream as an entrepreneur, it's actually still very expensive to run the entire race. And something I like to remind people of is, despite how prevalent the internet seems today, it's still in its infancy. Maybe it's awkward teenage years at best, but it's still early days. E-commerce actually only accounts for 7.2% of retail sales. So my point about that is that there is enormous room for growth still in the internet sector. And my expectation is that this growth will continue. It will continue to grow strong in the coming years. And as a result of that, communities like Austin will continue to be challenged for resources, both human resources and financial resources. When you look at, despite our local booming economy and really what I would consider a sea of opportunity globally for startups, startups have a staggering failure rate of 90%. 90% fail before they ever see their first round of funding. The ones left standing, the 10% left standing, 60% of them fail between their first and second rounds of financing. 50% that make it that far fail between their second and third rounds. So I think entrepreneurs are crazy. We can all agree to that. But entrepreneurs keep entrepreneuring and investors keep investing. And I don't see that changing. Quite frankly, what I've witnessed in this boom economy, this is my favorite picture, actually. How apropos is that? The big birds of venture capitalists, the little birds of entrepreneurs. So what I've witnessed that's unique to the last 5 years, and this is a trend that I think is worth calling out, is that in the boom times, everyone seems to be kind of vying for their place at the table a little bit earlier in the ecosystem and the company lifecycle. And generally speaking, in the last 5 years, the terms of investment deals have gotten very entrepreneur friendly. Another big trend that seems obvious, but accelerators have exploded worldwide. 6 years ago, when we started Capital Factory, we were the only game in town. There's over 1,000 accelerator programs globally now servicing the demands of these startups. So everyone's trying to figure out how to do this entrepreneurship thing bigger, better, faster, smarter, and I don't think that's going to stop. And so why am I harping on that? And what's its relevance to an economic summit? Austin is uniquely positioned at this convergence of an explosive technology ecosystem, an innovation ecosystem, and an explosive population growth and change. And I think that's a huge opportunity. There's no doubt it's probably also a big problem, but since I'm an optimistic entrepreneur, I will call it a probertunity if everyone in here promises not to tweet that I said that word. So, we're the fastest growing city in the nation. We're on every top 10 list, good, bad, or otherwise, and we're at the center of this great opportunity. Like all Austin goodness, we're keeping it weird even with our propertunities. Austin is #1 in the nation for startup density per capita. I mean, #1 in the nation. That's amazing. But we only have 114 deals. Now, this is not all deals. These are deals that are identifiable. But for the sake of normalizing the data set, Austin has 114 deals a year representing about $600 million in capital that gets invested in our ecosystem. Compare that to Silicon Valley, which is 3rd in the nation for startup density per capita. Anybody know #2? Miami. Silicon Valley is 3rd in the nation for startup density per capita, but has 10 times as many deals as Austin. 48 times as much investment capital. They have $24 billion of venture capital and investment money in their ecosystem. So, I think Austin's going to be pushed to focus its entrepreneurial and tech resources and its investment resources, and I'll get to more of this in a minute. That brings me kind of to the key take-home points from this. Bottom line, we're definitely going to see continued growth of the startup ecosystem. I'd venture to say, regardless of whether the economy is good, bad, or flat. In bad times, entrepreneurs start companies to create their own jobs. In good times, entrepreneurs start companies to pursue their dreams of changing their lives and the lives of people they love. But perhaps more importantly is the forthcoming millennial population. There'll be 75% of the workforce by, I believe it's 2020, if not shortly thereafter. And while they don't vote at the polls, they vote with their lifestyles. And this generation loves working for startups. So if you're working for free, what do you care if the economy's good or bad? You work for a startup. So I think we're going to continue to see startups innovate, which is a wonderful thing. With that, I think we'll see a follow of investment capital from outside our region into this ecosystem. I think we'll see more venture capital money coming in. I think we'll continue to see growing companies come to Austin to pursue their dreams of expanding and to take advantage of the talent pool, and the fact that, quite frankly, our deals on average are about half as expensive as deals in Silicon Valley, or even deals in Denver, which is an interesting ecosystem. So I think perhaps the most profound thing I can raise everybody's awareness about is I think in 2016, Austin is going to see, actually I would probably say Texas, is going to see, particularly the technology sector, is going to be asked to help with the burden that our growth is creating on the healthcare and education ecosystems. This explosive growth, there's not enough public money to solve that problem. And so I think we're going to lean on the private sector. I think the private sector's got a hungry group of people that want to solve, a young group of people who want to solve problems related to civic innovation. So they say necessity is the mother of invention. I think Austin is about to be bombarded with necessity, and it's a really good thing we have some inventors around. So I'll make the bold claim that I actually think Austin will begin to emerge next year and in the coming few years as a national center of excellence for healthcare technology and education technology. It's a profound opportunity for us. So I'll talk quickly about those two sectors, and then I want to close with my thoughts on what success in that ecosystem might look like. Why education technology? Why do I think about that? It's 15% of national spending, and Monet can correct me if I'm wrong. It's a big number. We can debate the specifics, but 15%. Did you know that one student dropping out costs $387,000 in the course of their lifetime as they move through juvenile justice, adult justice, and welfare systems? You want to move the needle? Those are some expensive numbers right there. So what do I see for education technology in the immediate future? I see it helping us understand the connection between learning and physical activity and education. I see it helping us optimize the environments for learning. These will mostly be wearable technologies and Internet of Things technologies in the immediate future. I do see that sector growing. But with the new research that's come out, the modern neurocognitive research, that we can actually change the brain and the intelligence of a human being, I think we're going to see technology really focus on things like expanded memory capacity, helping teach problem solving, and helping to teach high intensity problem solving. A lot of these Khan Academy and Singularity University and Leonardo Academy, these new alternative learning styles will continue to see more investment and more success. Obviously, I think the total model for education includes traditional education. I'm not at all saying it doesn't, but the multimodal approach and a definite shift towards money in education technology. Healthcare technology, why am I bullish on it? Let's start with the fact that it's a $3 trillion industry, 21% of GDP. So, everything's big in Texas. Let's solve the two biggest problems of national spending at healthcare and education. But 86% of healthcare costs are chronic pain or chronic care, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes. These are things that technology can actually facilitate. And since we've seen the first major policy change in the United States since Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, regardless of your opinion about it, has disrupted healthcare. It's introduced choice into healthcare, choice in insurance providers, choice in facilities and who you get your care from. And that trend is going to continue. I think we're in the early stages of that. Politics aside, there's no doubt healthcare is going to be massively disrupted. It's archaic in its use of technology, and I would bet on that all day long. 4 key areas that I see for Texas in particular: telemedicine. Telemedicine is not dead. There's an article today in the Texas Lawyer, I think is a magazine. It's a long debated whether or not telemedicine is dead in Texas. It is not dead. It is the only way to get service to the rural populations that don't have doctors, which is a big problem for us. So I believe telemedicine, patient engagement. So when you introduce choice into healthcare, now you've got to satisfy the patient because they're the choosers. So anything that relates to patient engagement, creation of content, creation of community, create a better user experience, those companies in the immediate future will continue to thrive. Data science, absolutely. It's in its infancy with regard to healthcare. It's been very focused on the payor environment. I think we'll see a shift to that in the patient satisfaction environment. And then, it's not super sexy, but any advances in fraud identification, prevention, centralized administration, security, centralized billing, they're small, but they're big game changers in healthcare, and I think companies in that sector will continue to be rewarded. So in closing, I want to recognize that these are 2 huge sectors, and they're both ripe for disruption. They're, at least in banking, you can do a mobile deposit. I still can't email my healthcare provider. So let's just say they are archaic, but I don't think success looks like a unicorn. There's a big debate in my community about whether Silicon Valley and the unicorn model is where we should be, and I'm going to throw down and say no. I think playing a leading role in the disruption of either of these economies will create jobs. It will create new revenue streams that are good for our economy. It will positively impact spending. But perhaps the most significant forecast that I can give you is that I think Austin's near future will be small incremental changes that collectively accomplish greatness. And that's in keeping with our spirit as a community as well. So bet on the small horses, don't bet on the unicorns, and healthcare and education technology.
It's a pleasure to be here today. As I was walking up here to the podium, I was thinking, we all have something in common here, which is none of us have any idea what I'm going to say. So. But I am going to talk about technology for sure, being in the technology business. And we are in a technology revolution today. And the effect that the technology is having on our lives is profound, and it's only going to increase. And there's a lot of technology companies, startups as well as large corporations here in Austin, and you can see technology developments here that are happening that are impacting the entire world and will continue to do so. So today what I want to talk about is really 3 things. One, I want to talk about something that's a very big challenge, which is the global economy that Miney already told us a little bit about, clearly affecting us. Secondly, I want to talk about something very exciting, which is technology today and some of the developments that I see that will impact our future. And third, talk about something fun, which is bringing more talent into our science and technology curriculum. So, first of all, you may not know very much about Emerson, so let me spend 1 minute on this, or less. We are a $25 billion global corporation, a diversified global manufacturing, engineering, and technology company. Our headquarters is based in St. Louis. Our corporate headquarters, we're about 115,000 employees worldwide. We are celebrating our 125th anniversary this year, and we are passionate about innovation. And what we basically do is we make the instrumentation and control software that actually controls and optimizes much of the world's critical infrastructure. So oil and gas production, refining, power plants, chemical plants, life sciences industry. You know, first of all, we make the smart sensors, or the nerves that are out there in those plants that measure pressure, temperature, level, flow, composition, those sorts of things. Secondly, we make the software that scans thousands of points every second, runs thousands of algorithms. It's really the brains, if you say, of a refinery or of a chemical plant or an oil production facility. And third, we then exercise the muscle, or the final control valve that actually manipulates the flow in a pipeline to control a particular facility. So we're not in discrete manufacturing. We really are all about process. So you think about it this way. If it flows through a pipe, we're there. And we're very committed to Texas. In fact, we have 5 different businesses. Their global headquarters are in Texas, 3 in Houston, 1 in Dallas. And the largest one actually here in Austin, our Process Systems and Solutions business, is based here. You can see we have about 850 people here in Austin, highly degreed workforce, engineering, a lot of software capabilities. And I always say that our brain trust for this business worldwide resides here in Austin. Our prolific inventors are here. A core part of our software development, we have about 200 software developers here. And so what we develop here truly changes the world of process automation around the globe. And we feed that technology out to more than 10,000 of our employees worldwide to apply and service that software technology. We've been in Austin since 1981, was when we came and established our first operation in Austin. And recently, as Pat said, a couple years ago, we opened and dedicated a $70 million investment here for an innovation center up on Highway 45. You probably see it as you pass up there in Round Rock. Now, I could give Mina's talk all over again, because while my technology pool and my technology resources run on an Austin economy, my business really runs on a global economy. And we have 2/3 of our businesses outside the U.S., and so we are heavily impacted by all the dynamics like that Mina talked about just a moment ago. So price of oil down has really squashed capital spending as well as even MRO spending in our particular industries. The strengthening U.S. dollar has put us at a competitive disadvantage against many of our large European competitors. We compete against ABB, Siemens, Schneider, some of those kinds of people in Europe on a global basis. And of course, slowdown in China has also hurt us. We're heavily invested in China. In fact, outside the U.S., that's my largest market for our products and technologies is China. So we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, in the panel. But in fact, it's tough to have a global economy like that. It's clearly made us some challenges this year as we've continued to try to invest and drive our technology business worldwide. So let's talk about technology a little bit. And I want you to just think for a minute. We're going to look in the rear view mirror of technology for just a moment here and think about the impact that technology has on your lives over the past 20, 10, 5, whatever years. So think about computer technology, the way that's advanced over the last 25 years. Think about the internet technology and how that's changed your lives and changed how you do things, how you interact with people and companies and data. And think about mobility and mobile devices, your smartphones and things, and how that's changed how you act and how you behave. Well, I talked about the oil and the energy industry and the oil and gas production, what's happening in the oil pricing. I would tell you the genesis of that is actually driven by technology. And it was really the convergence of 3 technologies that came together. That would be 3D seismic analysis, it would be horizontal drilling, and the fracking technologies. As you put those 3 together, it created an enormous energy boom in the United States in shale gas and producing shale liquids. And so that created an oversupply globally, created a price drop, strengthening the dollar, and so that is what's happened to us in the oil industry. It came really honestly from technology drivers. But what the good news is with that feedstock, that low feedstock of gas and oil price now, it's feeding a investment wave in the downstream business in North America, particularly on the Gulf Coast here. And you can see now things like we're converting our power plants, our electric generating power plants to gas, not coal anymore. We're taking coal offline. We're now building liquefaction plants to liquefy our cheap gas, to export it. So we're turning import terminals into export terminals with liquefaction trains. And third, we're seeing a huge boom in downstream ethane crackers, that sort of thing, to develop petrochemicals out of the cheap gas. So you can see a huge investment wave is coming on the Gulf Coast. This is going to drive for Texas a shortage of that kind of labor to actually drive a lot of that production capacity and build those plants in Texas. So that's the good news on the oil price. You feel it at the pump, it goes down, that's a good thing. For some companies it hurts us, but again, there's others that benefit in a downstream way. So now I want to talk about the future of technology. And okay, is there another inflection point like we just saw in the oil and gas business coming? And I will say absolutely. And there will continue to be. And I could talk about a lot of different technology areas that we're working in that we see these inflection points, but I want to talk about, again, one of these where we see multiple technologies coming together to create another inflection point here. It's happening, it started to happen, it will continue to happen, and that's right here. It's the connection of smart devices, it's mobility combined, and then it's cybersecurity. So we put these three very software-oriented technologies together, and that's what we have. So, well, what is this Internet of Things that I hear a lot about? So that is really the evolution of products to being smart devices connected in a larger system and ability to communicate with each other. So, for example, in your home, your home thermostat will become more and more intelligent, communicate with other systems in your house, and talk to the manufacturers or service providers of those systems. In smart industrial machines are and will communicate with each other to optimize and organize work in a factory without human intervention. Or your car will become more and more intelligent so that it will measure its condition and its environment and will achieve real-time downloads from the manufacturer to optimize its performance. So lots of smart things talking to each other. These all have three things in common on top of the product itself. The first is it has smart sensors. It has embedded microprocessors and software that make the thing smart. Secondly, it has connectivity components in it that make it communicate and help it communicate with other smart things. And third, it has software on top that literally collects the data, aggregates it, analyzes it, and presents it somehow as information, now useful information to the users. So how big a deal is the Internet of Things? I'm telling you it's very big. So the first wave of Internet, was really all about people connecting to people. And so think about the evolution of that, Facebook and Instagram and all the things that we have there today, or connecting people with companies, the kinds of changes that drove, the kinds of companies that came up. Facebook and made huge companies out of just an idea. Okay, that's happened to us in the first wave of Internet. The second wave now of the Internet, in my view, will be connecting things to things, and machines to machines, and machines to people. And so last night I actually checked on the Internet. As of last night, there were 3,206,000,000 people in the world that had a connection to the Internet. By 2020, the estimates are there'll be over 50 billion things connected in the Internet of Things. And so you will see this will have a profound impact not only on you as a user and the products and the things that you use every day, but also in companies and the opportunities and the growth of those companies. So for example, for you, what will happen here for you? Well, you will have smart devices all around you that continually are acting and you don't even know it. And you will lose the ability to go to your boss and say, I have to go home and fix my air conditioner broke, because your air conditioner knew it was going to break days or weeks in advance, and it probably already called the technician, and he's probably on his ways to fix it. So those are the kinds of things, your cars, all kinds of devices around you will become smart. And when you think about the implication on businesses and the opportunity there, this would create enormous opportunities, not only for large companies like an Emerson or a GE or a Cisco, to create the software and the smart devices there, but also new entrants. In fact, just this week, for example, Salesforce.com announced that they were going to get into the Internet of Things. They were going to create in their cloud software that allow you to connect these smart devices together. But also will be small new entrants you haven't even heard of yet and haven't even been conceived yet. So Millie, here's a great opportunity for you to think about new incubators and new areas in this area of data management and smart things. And I will also tell you that any product manufacturer today that just makes a dumb product is going to have to figure out how to play in this new world, or he's not going to be around very long. And so he has to move himself from a product design, product manufacturer, to also a software company to play in this new space. Now, I see two speed bumps on the road to utopia here. The first one is cybersecurity, because the more open I become and the more devices I communicate with, the more I'm at risk of being hacked And of course, we can't have people hacking into critical infrastructure and creating havoc and actually catastrophic situations. So that's a critical speed bump and issue that we must solve. The second is a skill issue. This is going to create more and more demand for software, technology workers as we create this world of smart things. So what does that mean for Austin? So we actually have been in this Internet of Things, we didn't know that's what it was called, for 20 years. We launched 20 years ago an architecture within our business that was called Plant Web. It actually embedded intelligence in all of our field devices, our sensors and our valves, and we created software that actually was able to take that data and use it to actually diagnose and interpret and anticipate failures in the condition of the plant and the equipment in the plant around it. And here actually there's a picture from our innovation center up in Round Rock, and you can see there we built a little process skid, a bunch of smart devices and smart pumps and motors and smart tanks that we literally can demonstrate and test and use this software to work on. And actually we also have software there that we can push that data out to also people around the world now. We really have now expertise without borders. We can move data to the people, to the experts for them to analyze and diagnose problems. The next generation we're now launching will do another thing. It will move from the Internet of our things to the Internet of all plant things. And so we'll put more and more sensors on more and more of the machines and the equipment in the plant, and we're adding mobility, which will literally now let an operator or a maintenance person walk around a plant with mobile devices or wearable mobile technology, and the machines and the devices will literally start talking to the person in the plant. So great advances in the process management and process business. But what I will tell you now, the second speed bump is critical to us. So as my brain trust and technology organization sits here in the Austin region, I've got to continue to feed more and more software and more talent and capability. And we have, quite frankly, in the technology sector, an imbalance. We have a supply growing, or a demand growing, and we have a supply gap in these technology workers, particularly in the software development area. And you can see some of the statistics here. I think these may even be understated a little bit. And so we have a cost of talent going up. And you know, we've worked with University of Texas here, A&M, the universities. But you know, we love the product. We love the engineering talent that comes out of these schools. We just frankly don't have enough for the demand and as it continues to grow. And so our choice then is either to import it or to offshore it. And you know, we really want to keep it right here at home in Austin. So what are we doing about that? Well, you know, we are with GE. You've seen the new GE ads possibly on TV with a new young graduate saying, I'm going to work for GE and I make trains talk to trains. This is their Internet of Things. This is their recruiting new talent to GE to do exactly what I'm talking about here. We're after it. IBM, Cisco, you know, we're all after that same bit of talent to really drive this particular revolution in technology. And we took a little different approach. We said we want to go where the millennials are, and that's on the internet. And so we went out and found this guy, Hank Green. He is an internet sensation. He is the science teacher on the internet. He's a video blogger. And he is teaching our young high school and college students all about science and technology, and he's trying to make it fun. And so on YouTube, he has 8 million followers, and he has over 1 billion views on his lessons in science and his science and technology. So we've actually drafted him. Actually, we pay him. But we're doing a national campaign with Hank Green. We've dragged him around the world. And also, this is our website on the left. And we've even put some sexy STEM ads in the Wall Street Journal and things you see on the right. But we are doing our very best, along with GE and ExxonMobil and Chevron and others, because the human capital is what's going to continue to drive our country and drive Austin here and drive the technology development. And we have to have more and more of our talent in this particular field. So with that, you know, tough economy. Technology is racing ahead. The industrial Internet of Things is a big deal and will continue to be a big deal. And we have to continue to get more and more of our young talent into our science, technology, engineering, math curriculums. So thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the warm introduction. As noted, I'm a proud graduate of the McCombs School of Business, and I was thinking this morning about the fact that I started at the business school back in the fall of 1997. And here we are, it's 18 years later, and for the first time, I made an 8 o'clock class. So, anyway, I'm here to talk about the Texas Water Development Board, and it's been interesting for me to hear the speakers that they went before me and find a way to sort of tie in what we do at the Texas Water Development Board into the scope of the conversation that we're having today. And, you know, take a step back, big picture, we really can't talk about growing our economy if we don't have water. As a state, if we don't have the water supplies that we need, not just to sustain what we have today, but to take care of all of our future water needs looking out in the future. Our involvement as an agency in making sure that we do that is both through state water planning and then mainly also as well as operating as a water infrastructure bank to be able to assist with the financing and developing water projects across the state. And our agency has been doing this since we were established by the Texas legislature in 1957. Since that time, we have financed in total or provided financial assistance, mostly through low-interest loan financing, also through some grant, but in total of roughly $15 billion in financial assistance since we were created in 1957. In 1997, the legislature passed Senate Bill 1, which established the process for what we use today in developing our state water plan. And I think, I've mentioned, I've been in this job now for a little over a couple years. I travel the state all the time. I'm talking to cities, water providers, folks that are interested in water, about who we are and what we do. And most people don't realize that we have a state water plan, that there is actually a plan in place that tells us, then it tells the state, the legislature, shows our agency and shows those water providers where the water will come from, looking out on a 50-year planning horizon, tells us who's going to need it, how much they're going to need, when they're going to need it, how much is it going to cost. And this is the plan right here. It's not quite this easy. This is actually the executive summary of the state water plan. The state water plan itself is made up of 16 regional water plans that are noted here on this map. And when these regional groups bring their regional plans to the board, and I have the set in my office, we're talking about 3 or 4 binders of thousands of pages of information that, again, show where the water's going to come from looking out 50 years. Now, before I get to the financing side of this, to highlight the importance of state water planning as it relates to continuing to grow the economy. A quick story about a meeting I had. I was asked by a CEO of a large publicly traded ag company in California that owns and grows citrus. With citrus farms in California, they have most of their operations is California. They have some farming operations in the Rio Grande Valley. He and some of his corporate leadership wanted to come in and hear about what our agency does and tell me about this state water plan that we hear about. And we sat down, and really what we were able to do, which I think was really telling and eye-opening to these folks, as they're trying to look ahead and figure out how they're going to grow their business, where they're going to move assets, and to be able to do so, and literally to go back and grab those binders from Region M, in the Rio Grande Valley, and show him, well, this is where the water will come from. I mentioned the fact that they were coming from California. So, I mean, you can understand right now with the backdrop of what the challenges they have in California and how they are trying to respond to drought. Fast forward to where we are today, and of course, we may still be in a drought. I certainly believe that we are statewide, but 2011 was the worst one-year drought in recorded Texas history, and here we are. We're still able to show that despite drought. We know, again, where the water's going to come from looking out on a 50-year planning horizon. We revise this state water plan every 5 years, so there's a new state water plan every 5 years. It's always looking 50 years out. The 2012 version is the most current version, and that's where all these numbers come from. We are close to having the next version. It will be the 2017 state water plan, but all the numbers I'm going to reference for our purposes today will be the 2012. Good news is there's planning. There's planning in place, again, that shows us how we're going to get there. If there's bad news, this shows it's going to cost a lot of money. So the $231 billion is the price tag for all of the cost of water looking 50 years out in our state water plan. I'm going to highlight the burnt orange portion of this for purposes of our discussion today. And it actually was coincidence that it was burnt orange, but I was pretty happy about that. $53 billion is the price tag for how much it will cost to develop all the new water supply that we're going to need looking 50 years out. It was mentioned that the legislature recently took some action to provide $2 billion to put towards state water plan projects. And it actually goes back to the 83rd legislature, the passage of House Bill 4, which created a fund that we call the SWIFT, State Water Implementation Fund for Texas. Voters then approved Proposition 6, which allowed for $2 billion to be moved from the state's rainy day fund into the SWIFT. The legislature said, okay, Water Development Board, you are now tasked with taking this $2 billion and somehow leveraging it to cover $27 billion over 50 years. This pie chart here takes the orange pie from the previous slide, and the state water plan shows or tells us that when we're talking about the $53 billion price tag, that's new water supply looking at 50 years, about half of that, the sponsors of the projects in the plan, those would be the water providers or the cities, the LCRA, the political subdivisions that are providing water and that will be the ones needing to develop and pay for it, however they do that. They would say, well, we anticipate and expect to have to take on half the burden ourselves, but we need roughly $27 billion in the form of some state financial assistance for us to be able to accomplish the goal. So when House Bill 4 passed, again, the directive was take the $2 billion and figure out a way to turn it into $27 billion. This slide didn't quite, for some reason, work its way over correctly on the interweb in the correct way. The point of this is to show the SWIFT, I mentioned State Water Implementation Fund of Texas, is just one of many programs that we have at the Water Development Board to assist with water projects. But the SWIFT is the only program that is dedicated to providing financial assistance to new water supply projects that are identified in the state water plan. So for an entity that wants to come to the board and receive a loan for that purpose through the SWIFT, the project has to be in the state water plan. To fast forward, just the real short version of how you take $2 billion and turn it into 27 is the fact that we're not making direct loans from the $2 billion fund. We would never be able to loan it and get it repaid fast enough to keep up with ultimately loaning out $27 billion over 50 years. So I mentioned the word leverage. We're going to leverage that money in a way that's going to allow us to be able to offer the $27 billion over 50 years. The way we do that is through the sale of revenue bonds. So the $2 billion currently resides in the SWIFT. It's being invested by the Texas Safekeeping Trust, but separately our board has the authority to go out and sell revenue bonds. So this fall, with the first round of SWIFT, we'll call it SWIFT round 1, here in a few weeks, we're going to go sell roughly $1 billion of revenue bonds to fund projects through the SWIFT in the first year. The SWIFT, and the reason why it works, and it offers, it's an incentive that drives the implementation of projects in this plan, is that we will be able to transfer some money from the SWIFT over to the program where we're selling the revenue bonds in a way that offers discounted interest rates, the ability to defer principal and interest. So it's the incentive that makes the deal work for the water providers that we know need to implement these projects. We just found out earlier this week that the SWIFT program, again, it's being a new program, we had to go to the rating agencies and ask for ratings for this transaction, and we were given AAA ratings by both Fitch and S&P. So what that means for these folks, and these are the numbers that point to how much is being borrowed by different water providers for this first round. For example, the Loose Bayou project in the Houston area, which is noted there in the southeast Texas, the $200 million plus number, they want a low interest loan through the SWIFT. When we sell those revenue bonds at a AAA rating and are able to pass along the Water Development Board's AAA cost of funds, which is going to be relatively low, probably 3% range all in right now based on current market conditions, we can discount 35.5% off of the interest rate that they're able to access through this program. So big picture on the $1 billion in projects that we're gonna fund this year, we anticipate those water providers to be able to save upwards of $150 million in interest cost savings over the life of those loans. So we've got the answer to how we're going to keep up with developing enough water supply so that all the positive things that have been discussed by the speakers before me can continue to happen, and I believe will happen, is the fact that you have an agency of the state that is not just planning, as we have been for years, planning for the future, but the state did take action to give our agency the types of tools through the SWIFT to make sure that we're not just talking about water projects that are in a plan, but we're talking about projects that actually get built and come into use. So thank you all very much.
Beck, thank you. And I have a first question. And Monet, my first question is for you. And that is Moody's this week forecast $52 oil in the U.S. for 2016. What do you think of that number?
You know, I'll tell you one thing. You never put a number and a date together in forecast.
I understand.
50, I think oil prices will stay low next year.
Okay.
45, 52, who knows? But they're not going to be climbing up too fast because there's a lot of supply in the market. So that's all I will leave you with.
Very good. Laura?
So I learned yesterday at the inauguration of our new UT president, Greg Fenves, that we are now the University of What's Next. You're going to see ads on this, I think. So I feel like we're the epitome of this morning on what's next. So I have some what's next questions for y'all. So my first one for Melly is, I have heard that one of the issues with the funding in Austin for startups is that we don't have the full spectrum of the depth for the full spectrum of funding that Silicon Valley has. Do you expect that to change soon? Or do you agree with what I've even heard?
The funding debate is a big debate. Some people don't think we have a funding gap. If it's a good startup, it'll get funded. Some people think we have an enormous funding gap. I personally think we sort of have to eat the elephant from both ends. There is a gap. There's varying gaps at different stages of funding. So Austin's unique in that with some of our IPOs that have created local wealth, we actually have a pretty vibrant angel community, more so than other markets. We still struggle with late stage and growth equity. Generally, you have to go east or west to get that. So yeah, I think money will come into the ecosystem. That's certainly one of my forecasts. And I think we will we'll have to do it a little bit differently. So it's only a problem if your model is that we should be like Silicon Valley.
And we have the two microphones, and also if you want to have cards, because this is our chance, as I said, to really get in-depth questions. So this is for anyone on the panel. How significant is the limitation on the H-1B visa applications for skilled talent from abroad as a factor in our need for such talent, and what can be done about it? Jim, this seems a good one for you.
That's a great question. We actually use a lot of visas. We do move people all over the world. We have, not only are we a technology company, we're also a large application engineering company. We have over 4,000 project management, project engineering people that work all over the world on our projects to apply our technology, apply our products. And so any project that we get into globally will have people from all over the world on that particular project. So we have, as I said, 2/3 of our business outside the U.S., 2/3 of our people, our talent actually does sit outside the U.S. So any time we have projects, anytime we have shortage of skills on a project, we have them in the network, we need to move those people around and be mobile. And so our ability to get those visas is critical. I think last year, we did over between 300 and 400 visas for temporary work here for skilled workers that we brought into the country. And for us, that's a lifeline. We have to have that. And so we continue to lobby for more and more of those and more access to those.
And the ability to fast track them.
And the ability to fast track is absolutely critical as well, correct.
Does anybody else want to comment on that? Okay. Beck, this is for you. Do you foresee desalinization as a solution for water shortage in California and Texas?
Yes. I do. The state water plan actually shows that we are planning for seawater desal projects in 4 of the 16 regions that I've noted on the map there that represent the regional water planning groups in the state. Those projects have been in the plan, I'd say, for a while. Certainly, in light of recent experience with 2011 and the current drought, I would say they've moved up, if not in urgency. But separately, I do believe technology is catching up with making it more costly or more cost-effective to be able to develop those types of projects. There's still a high capital cost associated with seawater desal relative to other water supply projects, but the gap is getting smaller. But for places like where I'm from in Corpus Christi, where there's tremendous opportunity with the growth of the port of Corpus, that will be reliant on water supply. Looking at seawater desal is becoming much more attractive.
Okay, Jim, this one is also for you, and very small writing. So, with the large talent needs associated with process tech, is Emerson embracing alternative educational credentials to traditional degrees?
Okay, well, yeah, that's a great question.
Actually, let me
great.
just say, I'm sorry. This also said something that directly affects me.
Okay.
How long will the BS and MS be relevant?
Oh, okay, good.
That's a great question.
Depends about what BSMS, right? But, well, actually, that's one of the ways I think we've been creative in attracting talent here in Austin, particularly, and from University of Texas. We work very much with the engineering group and also the business school here. But, we often don't hire direct software development people that have been trained in software. We compete there with the Googles and other people, too. It's a very competitive market in Austin. What we find, we like people to have more of a context of what we're actually applying our technology. So we have found, like the biomedical school here, we go back to biomedical engineers. We have a life sciences center here that does applications for our technology in life sciences. Go to biotechnology. We go to chemical engineering, get chemical engineers. A lot of the chemical engineers figure they got to go to Houston. The ones that want to stay here, we get the a
They'll
great
learn
pick
the
of it.
program.
Yeah, get a pick of it. Yeah, we can teach them the program. We can't teach them the chemical engineering part as well. So I would say we've gone after some other, not necessarily exactly the core thing you'd think of in software development, but a lot of the other engineering disciplines. Now, how relevant will those be? I think that's a great question. I think we've got to continue to work with UT and academia in general, because as the Internet of Things evolves, data scientists, a lot of new technologies, new skills are going to be required and are going to drive new business models, but we're going to have to make sure that we are keeping the education system up with the needs of these new technologies as they roll out. There's jobs we'll have in 5 years we've never even thought of today yet, and we'll have to have those skills.
Thank you.
I actually hear that question come up a lot for startups. There's this preconceived notion that if you're an entrepreneur, you don't value education, that you should quit your job and become an entrepreneur. I think a basic collegiate education will continue to be not only important, but a key differentiator for all technical fields.
Yeah, well, I agree.
I think they'll just be augmented. I don't think McCombs will go out of business anytime soon.
Yeah, that's right.
Laura,
But
we
they will
have
be
time
augmented.
for 1 or 2 more.
Okay, so Minnie, this is for you. Under what set of circumstances do low oil prices become a big problem for the Texas economy? And, well, I think you've already answered this part. What price and for how long?
Well, so the 45, well, again, I don't know the exact answer. This is from our contacts that we talked to in the Permian and in Eagleford. Last year, if you had asked this question, the numbers that I would have given you would have been quite high. So for like the Permian, it would have been in the 50s. It would have been maybe in the 60s. For the Eagleford, again, it ranges, even in one basin, it ranges from area to area, because you have, as I said, these tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1 producing properties. Some are much more productive than others, so those are the tier 1. So the costs there are a lot less than, say, the tier 3 properties. So what has happened now, though, as oil activity has come down, the price or the cost of inputs has really gone down. And so we're talking about fracking sand, we're talking about the supply companies that are providing services to these fields. So right now, people were telling us that if oil prices stayed at 45, they were pretty okay with it. Not everybody, mind you. The larger companies are doing better than the smaller ones because the smaller ones, some of them are in trouble. But so at 45, people can last for a while, but they're still waiting for the price to go back up to 60, I think. So what will decimate the industry? $20 oil. $20 oil, that would be bad for everyone, I think. But as I said, so there are a level of producer at 45 that'll hang on. I think if we were at 60, everybody would be very happy and we would be good to go. So that's sort of not the exact answer,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's very helpful. And
One more.
Okay. I'll take the one that are ahead because I think this is for all of you. Do more and more smart products mean less employment in the U.S. and Texas?
Good, those guys.
I
Who wants to
personally,
start?
I don't, I think it's human nature to fear change. And I think when we look at things like artificial intelligence and robotics and the consequence that could have on manufacturing and loss of jobs, it's easy to go there. I personally think greater connectivity, smarter implementations of technology, even to the point where they are replacing jobs, I think what it does is it unlocks new jobs, it unlocks new ecosystems. So no, I don't think it's going to, there might be some transitory time, but overall I think it's additive.
I'll just add one thing. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, no, good.
I'll just add one thing. So, everybody, when you look from outside, states from outside of Texas look at us and think we are just creating low-income jobs and low skill jobs, and that is not really true. Texas actually creates a lot of high-skilled jobs and high-paying jobs. In fact, Texas is one of the states that produces, creates both types of jobs. There have been a lot of jobs in both high skill, but also low skill. So I think it's not going. It's just the quality of job is going to be different as you go forward. I mean, we talk about this knowledge-based economy. You need a little bit more of an education in different areas, I think. So the jobs are still going to be there. They're just going to be different jobs.
I would add, first of all, I think that these technologies are going to create a lot of jobs globally. I think this is going to be a boom in terms of software and technology working jobs. I think it's a great thing. We have way more ideas than we have people to implement them right now, and we can get people to implement them. So I think that's going to create a lot of jobs. The second part of that question, though, is will Texas maintain competitiveness with other states and other parts of the country and other parts of the world to really develop that? And so I think we've got to continue to watch that supply-demand, make sure that we stay in balance. We're very sensitive about sending software offshore to develop new technology, new software offshore in China and India and Russia or wherever you want to go. There's this IP issues that we like to develop it here. We like to have our core technology brain trust in the U.S. I love having it in Austin. It's a great place to attract people and to drive it here. So I think it'll more depend on not so much will there be jobs, but will we be able to keep them in Texas and maintain a competitive cost and productivity to develop them.
And there's factors that have nothing to do with technology that are way more influential on that.
Right.
Thank you very much. This has been very enlightening.
And on that note, there is a continuing role for the University of Texas. That is quite clear, and it sounds to me like the Cockrell School of Engineering simply needs to get bigger.
So thank you for not saying the McCombs School needs to get bigger.
Yes, indeed. All right, this morning was a first stop on our 4-city tour. Next Thursday, we will be up in Dallas at lunch at the Federal Reserve Bank downtown on Pearl Street. You will be able to read a recap of all 4 of these events in the November-December issue of Texas CEO magazine. And for everyone who signed up for this morning's event, you will be receiving a link with the video. If you look behind you, we've been recording this all morning. With the video link, and you'll be able not only to recap what you saw here this morning for yourself, but you'll be able to share it with your coworkers and peers if you feel the need. So, The next Texas Enterprise Speaker Series event is December 2nd with LBJ Centennial Chair in National Policy, retired Admiral Bobby Inman, and his topic is Finding Opportunity at the International Marketplace. Many thanks to our speakers this morning and to our sponsors. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Pat.